This is our holiday flat. It was small but had most things that we wanted in it. A bathroom, television, Wi-Fi, and even a small kitchen and a cupboard, with a sink, hobs and microwave. And this is where we had dinner on the first evening. The Georgian Dragon, a pub literally backing onto our flat. After breakfast on Monday morning, we made the short walk to the Dartmouth passenger ferry terminal. Tina had pre-booked us tickets to travel on the Dartmouth Steam Railway to Paignton, which included the ferry tickets to cross the River Dart to get to the starting station for our trip, Kingswear.
It echoes around the valley, doesn't it?
It's wonderful. You know me, it's a sound that quickens the heart. It does.
The loco that was going to haul us on this trip was 7827 Lyddham Manor. The line between Paignton and Kingswear was completed in 1864. It was originally supposed to go into Dartmouth with a bridge crossing the River Dart near Greenway House, but because of objections from the landowners and problems with finance, the bridge idea was scrapped and the line was rerouted into Kingswear, on the opposite side of the River Dart from Dartmouth. The station building in Dartmouth was actually built and still exists today, having been converted into a bar and restaurant. The line is 6.7 miles long. Leaving Kingswear, it hugs the banks of the River Dart for over 2 miles, before turning right and climbing up through the Greenway Tunnel. Passing its highest point, the line then gradually descends to meet the beautiful coastline and into the seaside town of Paignton. Arriving in Paignton, we walked down to the seafront, stopping to have a coffee on the prom. We then had a walk along Paignton Pier, where Dave interacted with one of the locals. As we had fixed train times for our return, we planned to have lunch in Paignton. We did consider this place, the Inn on the Park, but were not impressed by the menu. So after a drink we walked further along the front to Old Paignton Harbour. Here we discovered the South Quay Cafe, offering delicious sounding scallop baguettes, which we had with a nice bottle of white wine while enjoying the view over the harbour. After lunch we walked back to Paignton Station to rejoin Lyddham Manor for the return to Kingswear. On arrival in Kingswear, we hopped on the ferry back to Dartmouth and our holiday flat. That evening, we had a quiet night in and enjoyed a Thai meal from here, the Sawasdee takeaway. On Tuesday morning, we decided to go out for breakfast. Tina had found some very good reviews for the Anchorstone Cafe, an open-air cafe in the nearby Coronation Park. So as the weather was still quite reasonable, we made our way there. The breakfast was very good, and the sound of steam train whistles echoing round the valley while we ate was very atmospheric. We had seen river cruises advertised the previous day while boarding the ferry, and decided that this would be an interesting thing to do. So we walked back down to Dartmouth Quay and got some tickets. We had seen this old paddle steamer, the Kingswear Castle, go past the previous day, and were very pleased when we found out that this was the vessel for our river trip.
Glad we didn't go out in this little boat. Rather close to the water. Yes, there was a place to rent. See this little alley up the sides there? There was a place to rent up there somewhere that was available. It was up the most steepest uneven steps you could climb. Actually, it might have been. See that yellow building over there?
Yes.
A set of steps beside it. It might have been up there. Not suitable for anybody with mobility problems or something, it said, and I thought, that does look a bit treacherous. It comes with that, anyway, not a bit.
Well, there's a road at the back of it.
Yeah. Is it a road?
Yes. Where that wall is.
Yeah.
This area is the most exclusive part of Dartmouth, and if you are thinking of buying a house here, you would pay in excess of £1 million. It is actually more expensive for the houses on the waterfront, because all of the materials have to be brought in by boat, and there is no road access. Here on the right of the harbour entrance is Dartmouth Castle. It's the third castle to stand on this site, being built in 1480, and it was the first to be built specifically to use cannon against shipping. The cannons in those days were known as murdering pieces, as poor casting techniques meant that they frequently exploded, killing almost as many people behind them as in front of them. The small blue boat you can see is the Castle Ferry. This runs between Dartmouth Quay and the small jetty you can see here in front of a flight of steps, known as the Stumpy Steps, which lead up to the castle entrance. Within the castle walls you can see St. Petrock's Church, parts of which date from the 12th century. The castle saw service during the English Civil War and again during the Napoleonic Wars with France. Its final period of service was during World War II, following which the management of the castle was taken over by English Heritage, and it was opened to the public. The tower you can see to the left of the church functioned as a lighthouse between 1856 and 1886. Leaving Dartmouth Castle, we entered the English Channel, and the water became noticeably more choppy. A few minutes further out, and our ship turned to head back towards the River Dart. Almost opposite Dartmouth Castle is Kingswear Castle, after which the paddle steamer we were aboard was named. Kingswear Castle was constructed between 1491 and 1502 in response to the threat of French attack, and was one of the first purpose-built artillery forts in Britain. By the end of the 16th century, improvements in the range of artillery weapons had reduced the usefulness of the castle, although it took part in the English Civil War and continued to be armed until the early 18th century. The castle was abandoned for many years and fell into ruin, but was restored as a summer house in 1855. It is now managed by the Landmark Trust as a holiday let, and you can hire it and stay here. You might want to be aware, however, that a few years ago, during a storm, a particularly large wave hit and smashed the windows you can see along the top of the castle. The small tower you can see to the left of the castle was a gunpowder store. Gunpowder was considered unstable at the time and was stored separately. You can also see what looks like a small thatched cover just to the right of the gunpowder store. This is in fact the pre-stressed concrete cover for a torpedo tube built to protect the harbour during World War II. Opposite Dartmouth is the picturesque village of Kingswear. When Dartmouth was a busy commercial port with up to 6 coal steamers a day coming and going, many of the ship owners and shipping agents built their houses here in Kingswear. At one time, when there was only 32 millionaires living in Britain, 17 of them were reputed to live in Kingswear, and there are probably many more than that now. Still in Kingswear, we pass the home of the Royal Dart Yacht Club. Founded in 1866, it organises races, events and a regatta on the river. Here we see the jetty of the Dartmouth to Kingswear passenger ferry, with the ferry there unloading. blue and white vessel you can see here is the Dartmouth Hire Ferry. It's so called because of the two car ferries in Dartmouth. It's the one higher up the river. This ferry is classed as a floating bridge as it has no means of steering. As it makes its way across, it picks up two steel cables from the riverbed which guide it. The current ferry was built about 9 years ago in Holland at a cost of £4.5 million. It replaced an older vessel that had been operating for about 50 years. Here we are passing Nos Marina, one of 3 marinas on the river. Behind the marina you can see what's left of the old shipyard of Philip and Son, which was established here in 1858. They built many vessels here, including in 1924 the Kingswear Castle on which we were travelling. Production at the yard peaked during the Second World War, when they employed over 800 people and produced over 400 vessels. After the war, the shipyard continued to build and repair ships, focusing largely on the fishing fleet vessels, until 1999, when the doors finally closed. The site was then left derelict for many years, until recently when a company called Premier Marine paid an enormous amount of money for the 28-acre site. Premier Marine have big plans for the site, and as you can see, the diggers have already started work preparing the ground. The plans include trebling the size of the marina, along with a 5-star hotel, spa and conference centre. Locals were also excited that the plans included some affordable housing, but this excitement rather faded when a local newspaper revealed that the houses would start at £750,000. Obviously an interesting use of the word affordable. As we progressed up the river, the banks became more wooded. The trees here are mainly English oak, which gives the river its name. The Celtic word for oak being dart, so this is the river of many oaks. The modern building you can see, with the somewhat angular roof, was built by the people who own the older building behind it to house their family. The roof is actually made of copper, and the jetty is fitted with a lift on the left-hand side to raise boats out of the water. Behind these houses you can just make out the Greenway Viaduct. This was built by Isambard Kingdom Brunel, and was the point at which the railway was supposed to cross the River Dart. The land you can see behind the houses and continuing further up the river belongs to the Greenway estate, at one time owned by writer Agatha Christie, and which we were due to visit the following day. At this point our river cruise turned back towards Dartmouth. The Kingswear Castle has both paddle wheels on the same shaft, so you can't turn the paddle wheels in different directions at the same time. An old style chain link steering, meaning the turning circle of the boat is very big, requiring a wide section of river and some tricky manoeuvring. As we made our way back to Dartmouth, we passed some naval cadets from the nearby Britannia Naval College. These cadets are training to be Navy officers in the Royal Navy and other foreign and Commonwealth navies. Ahead you can see the buildings of the Royal Naval Dockyard of Sandquay. This is attached to the Britannia Naval College and is one of the smallest naval dockyards in the country. The grey ship you can see behind the jetty is an old naval minesweeper. It never moves from that position because the engines were removed many years ago. Its purpose now to get cadets used to operating on a ship. Soon we were coming back into Dartmouth and the end of our paddle steamer trip on the River Dart. That night we ate here at Rockfish and enjoyed an excellent seafood meal. After dinner we had drinks outside overlooking the harbour. After breakfast in our holiday flat, we took the car to the upper ferry and crossed the River Dart. From there we drove to Paynton to charge our car. After one failed attempt, due to a stupid flaw in the placement of the charger, we did find another that was working and successfully charged our car. We then decided to drive to Brixham and see if we could find somewhere to have lunch. Unfortunately, when we got there, we were completely unable to find anywhere to park. Every car parking space in the town seemed to have been already taken. Tina said that she had noticed a place with a cafe that we had passed on the way to Brixham, so we headed back there to what turned out to be Lupton House. Here we were able to get a very nice cream tea for our lunch. That afternoon, Tina had booked us an entry time to visit Greenway House, once owned by Agatha Christie. Because of the pandemic, the National Trust, who now own the house, insisted upon a timed entry. When we got there, however, we found that the entry time was for the grounds, not for the house itself, and that there was a long queue to enter the actual house.
Old English Roses China over there.
Yes.
It's creaky Tom.
Victorian lady. Yeah, she does like a mother, doesn't she? Yeah, she does. When you go into the next room, on the wall on the left, there's a much larger picture, same picture, but large, and it's been hand covered.
Oh, sorry.
Alright, no, don't worry.
Upon leaving Greenway, we headed back to the ferry, Dartmouth and our holiday flat. Oh, and on the way out we bought a tea towel. That evening we decided to eat in and got a nice 2 dine-in meal from this M&S food hall just around the corner from our flat. Thursday morning we had a light breakfast in our holiday flat, then went for a walk and to do some present shopping around the centre of Dartmouth. We had lunch that day booked in probably the best rated restaurant in Dartmouth, the Michelin Guide recommended Angel, under head chef Ellie Wentworth. We spent most of the afternoon over lunch, enjoying some very nice drinks and some excellent food. After lunch we had a short walk along Dartmouth Quay and then sat and watched the world go by for a while. That evening was our last in Dartmouth, so we went to the pub, enjoying several drinks here in the Dolphin with a good mix of reggae and rock music to listen to. On Friday morning we left our holiday flat and returned to the upper ferry to make our way home. Our Dartmouth adventure was over.